and welcome to Textile Talks. I'm Amy Milne, Executive Director of the Quilt Alliance, and I'm connecting from Morganton, North Carolina, in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's pretty cold and rainy here today. I see a lot of that in the chat, but I'm glad you chose to join us today, and I invite you to introduce yourself if you'd like. Today we're going to see a new documentary video about fiber artist Susanne Clawson, created by high school student Murilo dos Santos and his grandfather, who is Suzanne's husband, Steve Klees. We'll watch the video and then I'll share a recording of my recent discussion with Murilo and Steve about what motivated them to create this special documentary portrait of the artist in their family. First, a little bit about Textile Talks for anyone new in the audience. Textile Talks is a weekly series presented on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern in partnership with the Quilt Alliance and our three partner organizations shown here: International Quilt Museum, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and Surface Design Association. All Textile Talks are recorded and available via YouTube. Oh, exciting, Carolina, I'm so glad to have you, Marilla's mom. Awesome. Lucille, if you'll put that link to the recording playlist in the chat box, that would be great. The Quilt Alliance is who I'm representing today. And if you're not familiar with our mission, it is to document, preserve, and share the stories of all quilts and all quilt makers. And the QA is 32 years old. We're a nonprofit, of course. We're member supported and we're open to anyone, quilters and quilt lovers of any style, age, skill level, or location. And we have individual members and guild group members, and our community has never been larger or more active. We would love to have you join us too. There are membership levels for every budget, starting at $25 for students and teachers, and $35 is the basic friend level. Once you join, you'll have access to workshops and resources to help you do the kind of documentation work we're going to see today in your own community. And the resources cover labeling, cataloging, photographing, telling, and archiving the stories of your quilts and those made by others. And our last workshop, which is still available on demand, was fabulous. Quilt photography with Kitty Wilkin. Coming up soon is going to be another on-demand class on creating labels for gift quilts, perfect timing with the holidays, and that will be taught by Hannah Parks. This year we added back our historic annual quilt challenge. This is a free benefit to members. They can join, tell their quilt story through a quilt, and have the chance to win some great prizes that were provided by our sponsors. And I want to give you a preview. You're the first to hear. Our next Textile Talk on December 3rd will be a QSOS interview, oral history interview with Harvey Fierstein, actor extraordinaire, and you can add quilter to that. Maybe you already knew that. It's going to be a great conversation interview conducted by Zach Foster, and you can join us for a separate virtual after party fundraiser with Harvey later that afternoon that will benefit the Quilt Alliance. So keep your ears out for that one and eyes out for that one. Just a quick reminder, please use the Q&A box for any questions you might have. Although the content I'm going to share today is via recording, I will be sure to pass your questions on to follow up after. You can use the chat box for greetings and any questions you have, and be sure to fill out the survey that you will pop up in your browser after the program. That helps us know about ways we can improve. We've enabled the Zoom's closed captions feature. If you prefer not to view the captions, you can turn them on and off by finding the CC or live captions button. Today's program, as I said, includes the playback of 2 videos, And I'll play them at full volume on my end, but you know how Zoom does that thing where it adjusts the sound. So you might have to adjust the volume on your device. Sometimes putting on headphones is a great way to counteract that leveling that Zoom does, but just giving you a heads up on that. So today's program is a result of an email I received from Steve Klees, professor of international education policy at the University of Maryland and husband of Susanne Clawson, a quilt and fiber artist. I assume I did not ask him that Steve found us by doing a web search or maybe through SACWA. I know Susanne has been involved with SACWA by donating her quilts in the past to the auction, but Steve was writing to make me aware of a video his grandson, Murilo dos Santos, made and uploaded to YouTube on October 3rd of this year, earlier this month. And within 10 days, this video, Steve told me, had over 11,000 views. And now it has over 12,000, by the way. So I was very intrigued. The video was really well done, and I now know that it wasn't the first documentary piece made by Murilo, a high school junior in Bethesda, Maryland. Earlier this year, he and two of his classmates won third place in the high school Eastern Division of Student Cam, C-SPAN's annual national video documentary competition that encourages students to think critically about issues that affect our communities and our nation. And their video, Living in Limbo, addresses the affordable housing crisis in the US. And I'll ask Lucy if she'll put that link in the chat too, because I know you're going to want to follow up and see that. It's a great video. And then Lucy, if you would also put the direct link to the video, Susanne Clawson, Quilt and Fiber Artist Extraordinaire, in there. What I'm going to show you doesn't have ads, so I got Murilo sent me a copy of the video. But this is his second documentary. And with his grandfather, Steve Klees, as collaborator, we got 3 points of view. So not just a typical one camera, one person talking without any interaction, but we not only get to hear Suzanne's journey as an artist in her voice, but also how she feels about what happens to the art when it leaves her hands. She has sold work via commissions and art fairs and has had the frustration and uncertainty that comes with not being able to sell work at times. Steve's point of view covers his reaction to knowing and admiring the artist, but also living with the work, both the advantages and conundrums. And Murilo is recording and framing and mixing these interactions and experiences with shots and editing that shows sensitivity and reverence and musical skills. He performs in a youth orchestra, so he brings that skill to video editing. So let's watch. I think many of you are going to really relate to this, not only the video, the work of documenting, but also Suzanne's, what she has to say in her experiences. So I'm going to play the video that Murilo and Steve created, followed by a video of my short discussion with them a couple days ago. Enjoy.
Susanne Clawson, quilt artist extraordinaire.
I mean, I can't go.
You can, but not in the middle. It's harder to edit.
My name is Susanne Clawson. I'm a quilt artist, and I've been making quilts for, I don't know, over 20 years. I was born in Delano, California, which is a small town in the Central Valley of California, not far from Bakersfield. I grew up in a town called Wasco, a small farming community, and we lived on with my grandparents' property, and then we rented a big farmhouse out in the country called the Smith House. When I was about 14, my father had previously bought some property over on the coast in a little town called Carpinteria, California, which is not far from Santa Barbara. And he went over and built a house for us to live in there. That whole summer, we camped out in a trailer, this tiny little ratty trailer, until the house was finished. We lived on a farm, and my sister and I were expected to work when we weren't in school. So we were out there chopping weeds out of the potato fields and the cotton fields. Gideon.
Who's that?
That's Footsie Pot. No, that's Violet, she's a tuxedo kitty and she's a midget. Her brother is a big fat lump, so they don't look anything alike. And I got a scholarship to go to Laverne College, which was a small religious-related school, which made my mother happy because she was very religious, for my undergraduate. And when I was in college, I got to go abroad for a year to Germany, Marburg and Freiburg. Well, I went to a year of graduate school at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, which my mother deeply approved of because there were all these protests going on. Well, I was a social worker for a while at Oakland, California, which was difficult but very interesting. I went to Oregon and took a summer course in computer programming, which is where I met my first husband, Marshall. We had art classes in school, where you drew stuff, but I don't think I had any particular talent for drawing, which I don't. My mother did a lot of sewing. She made a lot of our clothes for school. And she also made, every Easter, she would make us this fancy Easter outfit. I learned to sew in the 8th grade, and they had one of those old-fashioned treadle machines, which you had to go like this to make it work. I got married to Marshall, who I met at Oregon State when I was doing the computer programming class, and he got his first job as the first ecologist in Dade County, which is where Miami is. All he wanted to do was go fishing, and his idea of eating out was McDonald's. And I sort of had a nervous breakdown because I realized if I stayed there, my whole life was going to be him going fishing and eating out at McDonald's. And so I ran away and came back home, and I went back to Carpinteria. I was sharing this house with these other people, so I only lived there for about a year, and Steve was one of the people, renting part of the house, and that's how we met.
I'm Steve Klees. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland, economist by background, but teach in education. I've been living with Susanne since 1973. Suzanne's been an artist ever since I met her. She was always doing something. I don't remember the order in which it happened, but she was weaving beautiful things, rugs and freeform stuff as well, not just on a loom.
Then Steve got his first teaching job at Cornell, so I applied for the doctorate program at Cornell in sociology. And while he was teaching, I was studying. And so we went to this small town in the northeast of Brazil called Natal, not far from Salvador. And we had a house on the beach. And it was great with the dog and the cat. We had a loom. I started weaving. I'm not sure. I don't remember why. Maybe I was fascinated by it. And we had this small loom, and so I used to make things on it. I made a bunch of rugs, and I don't know where they are now. I don't know. I had these big pieces of plywood that I put on a couple of, what are those things called? Anyway, sawhorses, I guess. And I put out these tubs and have paper pulp and dye it all these weird colors, and there's one of my masterpieces. And another one of my masterpieces is in the Auditor General building in Tallahassee, Florida. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. Big piece, really big. And I called it Our Image of Brazil, because we just come back from Brazil, I think. And it got purchased by the
Percent for Art program.
Percent per Art program. Brazil was a very unique and great experience in general. And like I said, they have wonderful fabric in Brazil. In Bahia, I used to go to the fabric store all the time. I don't know how I came to it, but I was thinking of something simple but three-dimensional and not flat. I didn't want to have flat pieces of paper. So I took a copy of my thesis, my doctoral thesis, it wasn't my master's, and cut
doctoral dissertation,
and cut it, 8 by whatever, 8.5 by whatever the size is, cut it into quarters, and folded the things on the diagonal, and because they're slightly irregular, it made it really interesting to look at. And so that's where I got when you lift the pulp out of the water to make the paper.
Describe the process of making the paper.
Well, you have to get it's cotton paper. You have to get you buy these things called linters, which you soak and then you mix them up as best as, to make a pulp with it. I forget what I used to put in there to mix it up. To turn it into small fibers. And then you have this thing called a decal. It's a frame with a screen on it, and you dip it into the water and get it full of pulp and lift it up and let it drain. And when it's drained enough, then you do what's called couching, and you turn it upside down and put it on a piece of felt and let it dry.
And what did you put in the fibers, in the paper?
Oh, sometimes I put glitter in it or threads. This one has silver threads in it.
I remember when she cut up her PhD dissertation on the dining room table and arranged it like fish scales, folding up squares of paper into little triangular shapes. And it was white, but you could see that the art really was great. It was very interesting, even white. And then she did all these follow-up ones in color, and the colors were amazing. So
one of my first big projects was this handmade paper piece called Stegosaurus that I folded small sheets of paper on the diagonal and arranged them in an interesting pattern. Oh, well, it's just handmade paper that I folded on the diagonal and made this big, huge, I think it's 8 by 6 feet thing that I mounted on silk on a big canvas frame and a silk background. I glued the pieces of the silk and then got it covered with a nice plexiglass box to protect it, like that thing over there. I sold Stegosaurus to IBM in Gaithersburg, Maryland for $3,000. I'd get little pieces of the colored paper pulp on the deck, and I didn't think it should stay there. So I bought this kind of interesting, thickish art paper and painted the pieces and cut them into strips and curled them around a knitting needle to give them the curl, and then made that piece. And it seems like I have more than one of those. And this piece over here on the wall is onion skin typing paper, which takes the dye. I had these special crayons that were that were water resistant. So when you paint over the watercolors over it, it leaves this really interesting mark. Interesting design anyway. So craft shows in Florida, and I must have done that for what, about 6 months or something, where you pack up, you have to rent this van and you pack up all this artwork and then schlep it down there and have to erect this tent and then put because you don't want it to get rained on, and hang up your art. What I do, I think I only sold one piece there.
Going to art shows was this huge hassle. I did them with her. She went to a half dozen or so, and just setting up the tent. She had these heavy art pieces because the paper art was light, but it had to be protected. So we spent all this time and money getting plexiglass boxes screwed onto the artwork, and they were very heavy. And then trying to hang them in an art show tent. I mean, they were gorgeous, as you can see from the ones that we have here.
A craft show in Coconut Grove, which was very famous one. I forget what it was called. It was hard to get into, and I sold this really beautiful paper piece there, and I don't know where they were from or anything. And this is the ribbon I won. Does that show up? Well, I took another class with, and I can't remember her name, but this lady that always dressed in red and pink and had bright red glasses. And the quilt on your bed is a better version of one of the ones that she made, because mine's better because it has more and different colors and fabrics in it. So much more varied, much more interesting. I never make a big quilt that big again. It's endless sewing. So from Tallahassee, we went to Natal, Brazil, where Steve taught for 3 years? Two years, and we lived in a house on the beach. And then Steve got a job at the University of Maryland in Silver Spring, and we've been here ever since. The walls in the hallway are yellow, bright yellow, red, and orange with lime green trim around the doors, which I got the idea from seeing a house in a magazine of someplace in Mexico, and I just thought the colors are great.
To me, she's a real artist. Nowadays, quilt artist extraordinaire, but mostly a master of color. I live in a house that is just amazingly colorful in every room, because she spent everything she does is colorful. When the painter came, he saw that there were 7 cans of paint, different color, for an area that's very small, and it's beautiful.
Well, I took this class, I don't know what sparked my interest, but this woman named Susan Sorrell, whom I still correspond with once in a while, was offering this class online for making these small quilts with beads on them. And I, did a picture of a dragon. I did a picture of a stupid cat with his toes sticking up in the air, a whole bunch of things. But most of them I had a show at NIH, the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, and I donated most of those quilts to them, so I don't really have any of those anymore. I volunteered for a study it was in the paper, in the Washington Post, for a study on depression, because I'd had problems with depression, and I thought it would be very interesting, and which it was. And I went over there every week for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months, and I was always impressed by their changing art exhibits. So I looked forward to going over there because they had a lot of art on the wall that they changed all the time. Well, I don't remember. I think because I saw all the art on the wall, I went and talked to the art curator, whatever she was called, and asked if they would be interested in, having an exhibit of my little potholder quilts. And yes, I did.
And where are they now?
At NIH, probably in the men's bathroom. I have no idea. I don't know. Anyway, I donated them to them. Over the last 20 plus years that we've been here, I've made a ton of quilts. Some of them are completed and finished and are draped over a chair downstairs in the basement. Many more are just tops up here. The top is just the top part of the quilt with no batting or inner layer and no backing on the back. So these are called tops. And there's at least 100 there. During the pandemic, I was at the table, which the table is my dining room table, by the way, that I put the sewing machine on and madly sewing away. Although I've been making smallish quilts for many years, when the pandemic came along, I spent most of my days sewing small quilt tops. And now there's 100 plus piled up back here. At times I do consider myself an artist. Other times no. I mean, right now I'm not doing anything, so I don't, kind of goes away. Well, I have a whole bunch of small notebooks back here that when I get an idea, I make a little sketch. And sometimes it has color ideas with it, and sometimes it doesn't. And then when I was in my quilt making phase, I would look through the notebooks and I said, oh, I want to try that one. And that's how it's come around, I said, okay, I'm going to try that particular quilt pattern. But, inspiration from let me take a look, maybe I can get an idea where some of these ideas came from. I mean, I see things online, I see things on TV shows that give me idea. I subscribe to a quilt magazine, and sometimes they have something in there. And I look at like this weird thing here. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it's some abstract art.
Back.
That somebody
Back up a little more and up.
made, and I thought it was just cool. I like the design, so maybe one of these days I'll make something like that. I even often write down the names of the artists so I can go back and look up their websites and see if they've come up with something new. But sometimes I'll see something on a TV show and say, ooh, that gives me an idea. I hate to think what all this is worth, and fabric prices have gone way up. When I was started out, it's like maybe $5 or $6 a yard. Now it's like 12 and up a yard of fabric. It gets expensive. I will usually buy, if I have the option, a quarter of a yard or a half a yard fabric, because I'm always using smaller pieces. I don't make quilts that are all one thing. Some people do. They pick out a thing like a big bandana and make a quilt out of it, But I don't do that. My pieces are all it's called piecework. They're all pieced together, the various blocks. Well, there's shoe boxes full of all different colors of fabric stacked along the floor back here. It's a disgraceful mess. But when I was making quilts, I'd get there and get inspiration just from looking at all the different colors and textures and stuff. I've always liked color. All my fabrics are prints. I find plain, solid ones boring. So these are much more interesting to me. Well, one of the reasons I'm not quilting it right now is because I hurt my shoulder and I can't lift up the lever on the sewing machine, which you have to lift up and down all the time. But maybe I could do that. So maybe I'll have to try it again. But I was, having shoulder problems. So I stopped because it was too painful back then. I think maybe now I could do it. Anyway, I have a big piece downstairs. It's about, for each panel, there's 4 panels. Each panel is about 2 feet by 5 feet, maybe 4 or something like that. And I took wooden skewers, which I snipped off the sharp end of, and would wrap cloth around it, and then cover that with yarn so I'd get this spindle-shaped thing. I don't, people know what a spindle is. And so then I made this. It's all in blues and greens, mostly greens, and I call it the Jeweled Forest. It's really pretty. A lot of work.
At the beginning of another project.
Another project I had with these kind of 5 trapezoidal shaped panels that I covered with paper pulp onto stretched canvas on a frame. And the pulp was red-ish, mostly red, and then I used
Legos.
No, not Legos, and other things that make impressions in the paper, which I then would paint into. And I called them Starport because after I, put them all down, they look like something from outer space, or something you might take off from outer space and go to. Another project, I discovered somehow the telephone cable that's beige color, about that thick, is full of brightly colored little wires in the middle of it. And so I crawled into garbage bins at the phone company to get the cable. And then I made this piece called a Darth Vader meets Monet, which is 2 kind of freestanding doodahs. I got wire mesh, which I spray painted some background color, and then I would, tie these wires on to that, and it all, sticks out about 3 or 4 inches. Very bristly, but neat. And I call the Darth Vader meets Monet because one of them's very threatening, and the other one's kind of Monet colors. Yeah, that was so much fun. My favorite one of those is the one that names I call my cat, like Whisker Face and Snackle Toes, and I don't remember what all, Floppy Tail. And I would cut out 3-inch squares and then 2-inch squares, and cut the letters from the 2-inch squares and sew them on to make these quilts with letters on them. They were a lot of fun. This is a jacket I made that's made from a cut up sweatshirt. And I took all these, these kind of turquoise and purple fabrics and just cut them randomly, mostly in kind of triangle shapes, and I had to cut the t-shirt apart to do it so it'd lie flat, of course, but just sewed them all over the place. Then I put this nice ribbon binding on it. I got a pattern to make the rounded thingies here in front, and I wear it all the time, and I love it. And I think it's really cool. Well, I created art because I enjoyed the texture and the colors, and I enjoyed, putting them together to make something else, something different from what you started out with. And I just always found that interesting.
What's the difference between art and craft?
Elitist claptrap. white men, old white men, decide what is art and what is not. And given that most craft is made by women, there's a whole sexist patriarchal thing going on there too. Oink, oink, oink. Maggots. Oh, I've enjoyed doing it, and I wish I were still doing it, because I've got all this incredible fabric back here, and I don't know, I'm just lazy and I haven't done it, or I got out of it because of my shoulder thing, I guess, and I haven't gone back to it, and I should. I wish my my quilts were widely known, get published in magazines all the time, get purchased and hang on people's walls so they can look at them and enjoy them. I wish that people would recognize these wonderful and fun visions I had for all these little projects that I've made.
Let me show you what we did. We decided to fix up our living room. These are almost all tops, I think, except for one or two. All of these were made during the pandemic. Susanne just quilted up a storm, except for the bedspread. The bedspread is that big one she talked about. That this was going to be a project where the title was going to be something like how art took over my life and my home. And it did, especially during the pandemic. Suzanne doesn't remember anymore, but she was quilting morning till night. Just the whole time. You could hardly take her away to eat. And she never finished quilts, she just did the tops. But the tops are gorgeous. She's taken me to shows all around the world of weavers, of fiber artists. That's what she was doing, was fiber art generally. And her stuff was always as good, always as interesting. I really think, it belongs in museums, not in our basement. It's a shame that we haven't really been able to sell. We set up a website, but there's lots of websites, and getting it to rise to people's attention was beyond us. We tried Etsy at one point, but it was very, very hard to do. Suzanne used to take a portfolio with pictures of her pieces around to hotels, interior designers, trying to get commissions. It was not possible.
It was very discouraging.
Yeah, it was very discouraging. I feel very lucky that I live in a house with such color everywhere. But at the pandemic, it was extreme. I had to get her to stop and go to sleep. But it took over our house. I mean, we're going to take a picture in the basement and look at the quilts. But our basement is full of boxes of former art projects. Tons of yarn, paper pieces. Art has been her life. And I don't know the difference between art and craft, and I liked very much what Suzanne said about it. She really is an artiste extraordinaire. Well, living with Suzanne has made art a part of my life in many ways. I appreciate museums more. I appreciate fiber art more. I really like fiber. I was so impressed with Olga de Amaral and some of the other artists that Suzanne introduced me to. I always wanted Suzanne to do big stuff. She wanted to do big stuff, but you needed a big studio to do it. I'm still impressed that we've got a nice picture of her in front of the paper piece at the Auditor General building. That was a percent for art that she won, and got a commission of $10,000 for that. That was super impressive.
Brazil.
We're sitting on the
Yeah,
chair.
I worked very hard on all of them, and which I enjoyed doing. But most of them are sitting, I haven't hardly sold anything, and the tops are piled up back here, and the whole bunch of finished ones piled over a chair downstairs in the basement.
And
And
why,
there's a bunch hanging up around the house, aren't there?
and why haven't you sold?
I don't think I'm a very good salesman. I mean, I had a website and nothing ever happened with it.
So that
I would love to be a famous quilt artist and have my pieces snatched up by buyers and museums from all over the place.
So my first question is, how did you get 11,000 views so fast, do you think?
So, I've made like that a couple videos before since I'm in this communications program in my school, and it's very video focused as well. And we've been doing projects like them, and I was lucky to get an award from C-SPAN for that project, and it didn't get as many views as it did for this video, and I was very surprised because this was a final draft I uploaded, and I was gonna show my grandpa, and he saw it and he thought it was great, and we checked back in 5 days later. I get a notification, or I check YouTube and I see notifications. You have these many comments and these many views, and it was just amazing. I know 11,000 is not viral, it's not like crazy, but for a documentary about Suzanne and about her life is, I think, pretty substantial.
I do too. I think it's really incredible. And I'm curious about, I didn't look at what the keywords were. Did you put some keywords in there?
I didn't put any description. It was just like the final draft I uploaded. So I just put Susanne Clawson, quilt and fiber artist extraordinaire, the title that he created.
Yeah, and so many artists would just be so excited about that much attention. And I think it's really special, especially what was really touching to me was that you were talking to her about the popularity of her work, or and also just the challenge of selling her work. And I think that that will really resonate with a lot of the fiber artists who come to these talks. So this is people attending Textile Talks who are hearing it now, because I'm going to play this video for them, are listening, tuning in from all over the world. And many of them are practicing artists who sell their work. And so this is really, really fascinating. So you're in a communications program, and you were a junior, Murillo?
Yes.
Okay.
He is a
What-
junior.
Yeah, what school do you go to?
Montgomery Blair High School.
Okay, is that a public school?
Yeah, it's I think the biggest school in Maryland. I think there's 3,000 students.
And is it like a magnet for that study, or they just offer this program?
Yeah, it's considered a magnet. So if you go outside the school region, you can still apply to get in into the school and into that program.
Wow. Had you done any video recording or editing prior to being in the program?
That documentary was my first video that I mean, we did a couple small in school like interview videos, but that was my real first project that we did.
Wow. The
Yeah.
one about Suzanne or the one for
The one
C-SPAN?
about for C-SPAN. C-SPAN was
Gotcha.
last year.
Living
Okay.
in Limbo. And
It's so good.
it was shown at the Orlando International Film Festival.
Wow. It's really well done. And what I loved about that piece and about this piece is you have a real sensitivity to pacing and syncing with the music and sort of building an emotional sense in the video. And cause I mean, I just started writing about it because I thought you were really skillful. And Steve, did you suggest this as a topic or had you
Yes.
been thinking about it?
I've been thinking about, I've been trying to help promote Suzanne's work for my life, for her whole life. But during the pandemic, she was, as I said in the video, I mean, she was just quilting up a storm, morning, noon, and night. I had trouble getting her to stop and eat. She was just having intense interest. I mean, she does that in periods in her life. And I wanted to do something to promote her, and I was thinking of an article in a Sakwa journal.
Yeah.
The title was going to be, we even said it in the video, that how art took over her life and home. And I kept putting that off. It was a nice idea, hard to do, pictures and text. And then I hit on the idea, well, an article is one thing, but a video is maybe more doable. And I talked to my daughter. We started something on it, but then Murilo had his Living in Limbo video and was the expert on video, and so he and I just collaborated on doing it. I've been wanting, like she said, to get people to see her work. I find it amazing. I mean, she's taken me to fiber artwork all around the world. And I always thought her work belonged in museums. And so I wanted to show the world her and her work, less our messy home. But I really liked what came out, and I'm hoping that this will be the start of promoting something. I mean, my daughter had this vision. She went to the Rehnquist Gallery and saw an exhibit in which the walls had art all over them. And she had this vision of Suzanne's quilts all over a room in the Renwick Gallery. I always thought that was a wonderful idea, but not really possible. But with 11,000 views on the video and your textile talks, I'm going to contact the Renwick and just see if they'll talk to me.
Yes. Yes. And I think the other reason this is really going to resonate with people is that not every artist is lucky enough to have Steve in their life who is celebrating them and lifting up their art as more than just craft. And Suzanne talks about that very bluntly, and I love that. That is like such a choice soundbite. I was also wondering, Murilo, if you storyboarded this, or how did you, just one shot, or how did you do this?
So first we came up with a bunch of questions. Um, and that's really how it started. We just started listing questions, and then at some point we said, okay, we need to record or else nothing's gonna happen. So we do, and it ended up as a hour 20-minute recording of the interview with Susanne, and um, throughout the interview, I kept jumping in on Grandpa's questions because sometimes it jumped ahead or it
Right.
went back, and I think it made sense to be in chronological order from the start of her life uh, to present. And so then I started editing, and that took a really long time going through and cutting out blank space, cutting out stuff that she's already said, extracting parts that belong at the beginning, putting parts that belong at the end. Um, but I really went about it spontaneously. I didn't really have a plan laid out.
Murilo kept me on track. I mean, I had a lot of things I know Suzanne could talk about interestingly, but Murilo sort of pushed it into a timeline that really worked well.
Yeah, and I was so impressed with the content that you pulled in, the
Ah,
stills that you edited in, and the finesse of what you chose, and how you technically carried it off. How do you hope people use this? How do you want it, you're interested in it helping to get more people to be aware of her work. And then for you, is it now, Murillo, is it now a portfolio piece?
And it definitely could be for whatever, but that's the main focus. I did this to help Suzanne because all over the house I see her work just folded up on laying over a chair or something. And I don't think her goal is to like get rid of all of them and have a bunch of money. It's just beautiful pieces of work, and her whole life, like she said, she wants people to recognize the pieces that she worked so much on, and getting some attention on it. That
Yeah.
was the primary goal.
but hopefully you'll submit it for documentary.
Yeah, I think it has it definitely, it strikes a lot of chords that are not just specific to fiber art, but are about family and points of view of a family. And I titled our session, The Artist in the Family, because I think that so many I live with my 93-year-old dad who is a painter, and this is because there's so much mess back there. I can totally relate. And his work is everywhere around me. And so that is also why this really resonates for me. But wow, I am sorry, I'm having trouble getting my video to come back on. There we go. Oh, thank you so much for all the beautiful comments that we will be able to pass on to Murillo and Steve. I really hope that this inspires you all to take action, whether it's to start making notes or make a plan about the artists in your family. I know I mentioned my dad. I've been interviewing my dad. I've been documenting his work for some time, but this really got me off my chair, and it's made me think about being more conscious about the timeline here, you know? And, we really appreciate Murillo and Steve. First of all, Steve contacting us, and then Murillo being willing to schedule time after school. He has, precious little time, but we're so proud of what he's done, and really inspiring, really inspiring. And I hope you'll check out our resources for some help with documenting. We have a lot of resources on our website, on previous Textile Talks, and lots of project content. So I want to remind you about next week's talk, the machine stitch, sewing an expanded field. This looks great, presented by Sakwa. Thank you all so much for joining us today. What a beautiful afternoon experience to spend it with you all. Thank you so much. Do go watch the video, follow the links, and visit Suzanne's website. And Carolina, thank you so much for being here. Steve's daughter, it was really special to have you here too. I'm going to go ahead and play us out with our sponsor video. Thank you, sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. And we couldn't do it without you, our audience, who's here every week. Thank you. And if this was your first Textile Talk, I hope you'll come back next week. Take care, everyone.